minutes here to do some logistical changes on some equipment, and then we'll be up and running with yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Was that Parley has a very long history involved with yours truly, Johnny Dollar, extending all the way back to the very first year of the series, and then all the way up into the famous Bob Bailey era that all of us love. And so in picking a script out, I picked one in which Parley will be recreating the actual role he played it in originally. And so with that in mind, let's get started.
Well, hold it, before you start, sir. We want to tell the audience that we have live gunshots.
Very good.
And we want to make sure you don't get too frightened.
Okay, and then the other thing is no flash pictures during the recreation itself. If you want to take pictures at the end, that's fine. If you have no flash, you want to take shots that way, that's fine. But no pictures during the recreation because it can blind some of our actors here. And now we will get started.
From Hollywood, it's time now for
Johnny Dollar.
Earl Foreman here.
Foreman?
Tri-State Life and Casualty. I'm the branch manager down here.
I'm sorry, Mr. Foreman, but the answer is no.
But this is an urgent case, Mr. Dollar. We've already had to make one bail.
I'm sorry, but it'll have to wait. I'm trying to get away from this New England weather as fast as I can.
Well, I can't blame you for that. There's no reason you shouldn't get down here.
Look, I've had a rough year, okay? I'm tired, I'm cold, and unless I can get down to where the warm, balmy breezes waft in...
Dollar, I've got to have you on this case. There's a law that's state. Now, my office down here...
Listen, I'm sorry, but...
Down here in
I just can't do it, Mr. Foreman. I've just made plane reservations for Sarasota, Florida, and this is one time I'm gonna... where did you say your branch is?
Florida. Sarasota, Florida.
Tonight, CBS presents Parley Baer, Fred Foy, and Peg Lynch in the exciting adventures of the man with an action-packed expense account, America's fabulous freelance insurance investigator.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar. Expense account submitted by Special Investigator Johnny Dollar to Tri-State Life and Casualty Insurance Company, Home Office, Hartford, Connecticut. The following is a list of expenses incurred during my recent investigation of the burning car matter. Expense account item 1, which I thought was going to have to absorb myself. $129 for transportation and assorted incidentals to Sarasota, Florida. By the time I arrived there, it was nearly 5 p.m. So instead of checking into a hotel, I taxied, that's item 2, by the way, $1 even. Taxied to Earl Foreman's office in the Burchett building. Earl turned out to be a tall, easygoing, lanky fellow with clear blue eyes and a ready smile. Well, Mr. Foreman, what can I do for you?
Johnny, it's after 5 o'clock. Who wants to sit in an office and talk business this time of day? You're in Florida, isn't that?
Well, I thought from your call that this was a pretty urgent matter, Mr. Foreman.
Oh, it is.
Well, then what's the problem?
Well, arson, probably. But before we talk about it, I don't see why we can't go out to my little shack on the quay and be comfortable while we talk about it. Besides, Michael wants you for dinner.
Mike?
My wife.
Come on.
Come on, Mike. Jalopi's right out at the curb. Let's go, Johnny.
His jalopy turned out to be a misnomer. His car was a brand new Cadillac, complete with air conditioning and all the fixins. And the shack, well, the shack was anything but. It was the tip of the key right across from the mainland. Beautiful 2-story concrete stucco job. Big yard backed up to a quiet bayou, and there tied up to the dock was a 24-foot speedboat, ideal for fishing the Gulf of Mexico. Yeah, my mouth began to water, and it sure must have showed.
As soon as you get things settled, you and I can spend a couple days out in the Gulf. It's the best fishing out there you ever saw.
Brother, that is for me.
After all, as long as you're here on an expense account...
Yeah, but it is charged to your company, don't forget.
Yeah, that's right. Well, anyhow, here she is at the door.
Who's that?
That big, fat, overbearing broad I'm married to.
This was another switch, for Earl's wife standing in the doorway was the cutest woman I'd seen in a long time. Petite, pretty, and blonde, with eyes that you'd notice right away because they were almost green. Eyes that suddenly narrowed when she looked at me, and I couldn't help but wonder why.
Johnny Dollar, did you say?
That's right. He's an insurance investigator hired to investigate those fires.
Oh?
Any objections?
No, of course not. Just set your bags here in the hall, Johnny.
All right.
Would you like to have a drink after your long trip?
Yes, he would. You can get me one, too.
Scotch, Johnny?
Yes, with soda, please.
Sit down, Johnny. Sit down, boy. Sit down.
Thanks. I take it that Mike isn't too interested in the insurance business.
Oh, you noticed that? Yeah, she used to be a singer and a dancer.
Oh, I see what you mean. This type of life is a lot different than that. Well, now that we're comfortable, Earl, tell me all.
Well, I actually think we should wait until Arnold Carr gets back here.
Carr?
Yeah, the Carr brothers. They're owners of a big lumber business. Arnold runs the business, and Ed, he just kind of shares in the profits. A real black sheep of the family is best I can learn.
Oh?
Well, anyway, they've got lumber yards all over the United States. One here in Sarasota, one up the coast at Fort Pierce, still another one at Arcadia. That's about 40 miles inland, just east of here. And there's one in Orlando.
There was?
Completely destroyed by fire a couple of weeks ago. On $120,000.
$120,000?
$120,000.
That's the Arnold Carr where he's at, in Orlando, trying to clean things up. Here's your drink.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you.
Well, here's to the God and goddesses and us.
Shouldn't I be in Orlando then?
No, he shouldn't. Arnold's on his way back here now. He lives here. He just went up there to arrange the clearing of the area and the sale of the property.
You mean he's just planning on pocketing the money? If Tri-State pays off, I mean?
Looks like it.
But I take it you think it's arson.
Yes, Earl suspects arson, and so does Arnold Carr. At least he says he does, except he has no reason.
No? What about the other fires? Or attempted fires?
Other fires? Where?
Well, at Arcadia for one, except they got it out in time.
At least that's the way Arnold Carr reported.
Let me tell it, Mike.
Okay.
There was a fire at the yard in Sarasota. Arnold discovered it himself one night when he was driving around.
Was there anything to indicate that it was attempted arson that time?
No. The authorities up in Orlando found no indication either.
Mike, you know as well as I do that a lumberyard fire will obliterate signs of arson better than any other kind of fire in this world.
Yes, but she's got a point, Earl. Unless there's some evidence of arson, how can you prove it?
That is a problem.
Then why send for me?
Well, mostly because...
Actually, it's because Arnold Carr suspects it.
But he's giving you no real reason.
Not at all.
I think he has a real reason, but he just won't tell us. Wait until you see it. He's going to give us a call as soon as he gets in. When he does, we'll run over to his place on Longboat Key.
What about his brother? Edward, did you say?
Well, I've never met him. He always stays in Orlando.
I was wondering if he might tell things that Arnold might be holding back.
You mean Edward Carr might know something?
Well, you never can tell with these things. Hello?
This is Arnold Carr.
Oh, hi, Arnold. Johnny Dollar has arrived. We'll be right over there. Wait, why don't you just talk to him? Here, Johnny.
No, Earl, listen.
What's the matter?
Arcadia just went up in flames. The whole yard.
Good Lord. Did you hear that, Johnny?
Yes, I heard it.
Can you prove it was arson?
I have proof.
Well, all right, Arnold. We'll be over in just a minute or two.
No.
What's the matter?
No. Wait for me there, at your home.
Now, wait just a minute, man.
You mustn't come here. I mustn't stay here because...
Listen to me, Arnie. Arnie. Mr. hung up. But he said he would be right over.
A suspicion began to grow in my mind. A suspicion that Mike apparently shared with me. The possibility that Arnold himself might be responsible for these fires. After all, he was the only one that seemed to know about the two unsuccessful attempts. He himself had planted the idea about arson, and he'd lost no time in filing a claim for the Orlando fire. But Earl said I was wrong. Arnold was too honest. Earl also said we were only 15 minutes from Carr's home, so when half an hour passed, we called him back. We didn't get any answer. After the fourth try, the three of us took off in Earl's caddy. As we pulled into Carr's drive, we could see him through the picture window, sitting at his desk, telephone in hand, apparently engrossed in a call. Then as we walked up to the door, I noticed something else. Arnold Carr looked enough like me to be my brother. Maybe that explained Mike's reaction when she first saw me.
Hey, Arnie.
Can't He's on the phone in there.
Well, the least he could do is answer his own doorbell. What's the matter with him?
Earl, wait a minute.
Good Lord.
What's the matter?
Through the window.
Oh, no.
Earl?
Stand back.
Earl, for goodness sakes, what is it?
Couldn't you see from out there?
No, what's wrong?
Well, Johnny?
Looks like a bullet right through the forehead. Probably a 38. Before I could stop him, Earl took the phone out of the dead man's hand and called the police. I gave the place a quick rundown, checked the windows, the doors. A few minutes later, a rather obnoxious young sergeant named Larkin arrived, and then he took over.
Yes. A 38 caliber right through the center of the forehead. Were all three of you there when it happened? Mr. Foreman? Mrs. Foreman? And who are you?
The answer to your first question is no, Sergeant. None of us were here. And this man is Johnny Dollar, an insurance investigator.
Hi.
You insurance guys work pretty fast. The body's not even cold. Are you related to Mr. Carr?
No. Why?
You look a little like him. Who busted the front door? The killer?
I did. When we drove up, we saw Carr sitting at his desk. We rang the doorbell and knocked.
And when he didn't move, you took things into your own hands. Is that it?
No, I figured the small round bullet hole through the middle of his head wasn't normal. So I thought we might want to take a closer look.
Did you touch anything?
No.
Except that I took the phone out of his hand to call you.
What kind of investigator are you, Dollar? You should have made sure that you didn't touch anything. Let's see. This shot must have come from somewhere. Let's see, this window is... Yep. There it is, a bullet hole right through the pane. The bullet must have been fired from outside.
You're sure, Sergeant?
Sure. Look for yourself. And you call yourself an investigator? Hey, Warren, Newman, check the area around the window outside and see if you can find any footprints. Now, you folks, get out of here so I can call Dr. Davies and get on with this investigation. And no, Dollar, I don't need any of your help.
Well, thank you, Sergeant.
My job is murder, not yours. Hey, wait a minute. Where did Mrs. Foreman go?
Out to the car.
Why? And who told her she could leave?
Who told her she had to sit here looking at a corpse and listening to you chatter on?
All right. Just make sure the three of you stick around town, just in case I have any more questions.
Oh, absolutely, Sergeant.
Arnie wasn't shot by somebody outside? What do you mean, Johnny?
No, I spotted that bullet hole in the window, too.
So?
I also noticed that there were no particles of glass on the inside sill.
But there were some on the outside.
Yep. The shot that was fired was from inside that room. It was an amateur attempting to make it look like it had been fired from outside.
And someone was inside there with Arnold Carr.
Yes? Either someone he let in or had access to the house. Whoever it was must have wanted to stop Arnold from talking about the fire in Arcadia. Say, how much do you know about his brother Edward, anyway?
Well, nothing really. Nothing except what Arnold told me.
Either of them married? Any family of any sort?
Arnold wasn't, but I don't know about
Arnold's death means that Edward owned the business then all by himself, right?
Yes.
And he lives up in Orlando, the scene of the first big fire?
Yeah, John, you don't think his own brother...
Hey, where can I rent a car?
Take Mike's car. It's the white one in the carport of the house. What are you going to do?
I'm going to drive up to Orlando by way of Arcadia. When I got to Arcadia, there were only a few people standing around the fire. One fire company was still working on it, and a couple of police were poking around the ashes. Walking towards it, I almost stumbled over a little old man sitting alone in the darkness next to a palm tree. He was hunched over, his head in his hands, sobbing. He didn't even look up when I stopped beside him.
Well, it's like losing a part of my own life, it is.
You lose something in the fire, sir?
No, son, only part of my life. I helped build up that yard, me and Mr. Carr.
You mean Arnold Carr?
Yes, all along we've been worried about it. Last week when him and me smelled smoke and saw that barrel of trash was smoldering, he knew.
Knew what? That somebody was trying to burn him out?
That's why he stopped by tonight on his way home. That's why we drove over here, him and me. I brought my gun just in case. But we got here too late. It was already blazing. And when he saw the automobile pulling away...
What automobile?
You see, Frank, he said to me, I knew he was the one trying to burn me out.
Who, old-timer? Who did he mean?
Well, he didn't say. Then he called the fire department and...
That car that pulled away, what was it?
Just an auto, a big white Buick.
But he tied it in with whoever set the fire?
All he said was, I knowed he was the one.
Do you know who he might have meant?
He told me that if I did know, I should never tell. Even the police.
Well, who do you think it was, man?
Take my word, Mr. Arnie? No way.
Now, look, old man, I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but Mr. Arnold is dead.
But he can't be. He was just... No, wait a minute. I see. Maybe you thought I wouldn't know you in the darkness, but I do know you.
Now, wait a minute.
And if Mr. Arnold's dead, it's because you killed him.
What?
Just like you set the fire.
Hey, look, old man, I'm not who you think I
I'll
am.
kill you. That's what I'll do.
Put down that gun.
And now, Act 2 of yours truly, Johnny Dollar, in the burning car matter.
Expense account item 3, $5.15 for gas for the borrowed car to keep me going to Orlando. Either the old man's eyesight was bad or he just a lousy shot. Either way, it was okay by me since all 4 of the shots missed. I hate to slap him down like that, but there was no point in hanging around for the local authorities. So after making sure I really hadn't hurt him, I appropriated his gun and took off fast. He thought I was someone else. Even I had noticed the family resemblance to myself and Arnold Carr. Sergeant Larkin had asked me if I was related to him. Even the old man had apparently thought I was the one who... Oh well, I'm afraid I made the rest of the trip to Orlando in somewhat less than legal time. At police headquarters, I barged into the office of Lieutenant Hudson without bothering to be announced.
Sit down while I finish up that report, Mr. Carr.
Thanks.
I've been trying to reach you, but we didn't get an answer when we tried to phone you.
That's interesting.
I'm afraid I have the painful duty to inform you that your brother Arnold down in Sarasota... What do you mean that's very interesting? Have you already learned? Oh, be doggone, wait a minute. You're not...
Wait a minute, you're not the first one.
Who are you?
Johnny Dollar, insurance investigator.
Well, I can't believe it, Dollar. You look enough like Edward Carr to be his twin. Well, you even sound like him.
Yeah, I take it you haven't located Edward yet, then.
Well, no.
Lieutenant, I think Edward Carr might be the firebug we're after, and the killer.
Now, wait a minute. What makes you think he killed his brother?
Now, briefly as much as possible, I told him about Arnold Carr's phone call to Earl Foreman and how upset Arnold was just before he was killed. I told him that Arnold had been killed by someone inside the house, someone close to him. And everything indicated that that someone could very well be Edward Carr.
Well, that's all theory, Dollar. You need to have proof. I'll admit that Edward is a pretty worthless playboy living off the profits of the lumberyard and everything, but why murder his brother?
As I explained my suspicions, Lieutenant Hudson finally agreed to put an APB out for Edward Carr. That was at breakfast for the 2 of us. That's item 4, by the way, $3.25. Before I left the captain, he gave me Edward Carr's address, 1726 Allen Place. As I expected, there was no answer to the doorbell at 1726, so I tried visiting up the street. Quickly, it became clear that Edward Carr wasn't very popular with his neighbors.
He was always throwing all of these parties, cars driving up and down the street all hours of the night, blocking respectable people's driveways.
Yes, ma'am.
Once in a while, you expect a person to have callers and such. Me, I have a ladies' bridge club every Thursday. But these are all ladies, not like some of the trash he has for friends. Why, you should see dancing and drinking and carrying on at all hours.
You mentioned cars,
You know what I mean. Good people like Mrs. Herbert Robbins. She's a very nice lady, a widow, you know. She could have her pick of anyone nice, but does she ever look at another man? No. And then
Mrs. Harper.
Yes.
You mentioned cars. Do you know what kind of car Mr. Carr drove?
Well, of course I do. I'm not stupid, you know. It was a big white one.
And the make?
Well, no. You see, my husband, bless his sweet dead heart, always drove a Maxwell, so that was the only car I ever got to know by name. But Mr. Carr's is white. You know, I've always thought it kind of funny. What with everyone driving white cars here in Florida?
Now look, Mrs. Harper.
Even that blonde hussy who's been bothering him all the time drives a white car. Oh, I'm sorry, I really shouldn't use that kind of word, should I?
Wait a minute.
It fits, you see.
Wait a minute. What blonde, Mrs. Harper?
Mr. Dollar, what kind of woman do you think I am? I don't pay attention to those kind of women. Why, you would think she owned that house of his, the way she keeps stopping in and out at all
Mrs.
hours of the
Harper.
night. She drives all the way up from Sarasota,
Do
too.
you know who she is?
I do not. I refuse to pay any attention to people like her. And the way she dresses like a rich chorus girl with all her fancy clothes
Okay,
and furs.
so how do you know she comes from Sarasota?
Why, the license on her car, of course. Every city has its own number. You know that very well. And hers is WW. That stands for Sarasota.
And you don't know her name?
Of course not. Flaunting all those expensive furs as though she had bought and paid for them herself. She may have paid for them, but it wasn't with... And if there's something I hate to see, it's a little shrimp loaded down with all those furs and jewels. Now, a tall
Mrs.
fur-
Harper.
Well, if there's anyone I don't trust, it's a person with green eyes.
Thank you, Mrs. Harper. Her description of Carr's girlfriend stopped me in my tracks. That description could fit Mike Foreman to the letter. Petite blonde, green eyes, and came from Sarasota. Then I remembered Mike's reaction when she first saw me. Her dismissal of Edward as a possible suspect. There was obvious friction between Earl and Mike, too. I figured it was just normal for a couple that had been married for a while, but now, item 5, a $1.30 phone call from the nearest phone booth I could find to Earl Foreman back at his office in Sarasota.
Well, no, she isn't, John. Why?
Well, you know where Mike is.
Well, no. When I woke up this morning, I could hear her talking to her girlfriend, Betty, on the phone downstairs.
Betty?
Betty lived down here in Sarasota. They used to be on the stage together. Sister acts, you know.
Uh-huh, but
then, when I went down for breakfast, she was gone. She took my car, too. I had to come to the office in a taxi.
Well, okay, Earl. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, anyway, wait a minute. How you doing? Have you found anything out about this murder and arson business that I should know about?
No, Earl. Nothing that you need to worry about. I hope. I sat down at a corner drugstore. That's item 5. 80 cents for a sandwich and a Coke. Trying to think things out. But I'm afraid I didn't like anything I worked out. Finally, I decided to drive over to where Edward Carr lived. Parked a couple of blocks away and walked back to 1726. I rang the front doorbell and knocked a couple of times. Finally, I finagled the lock on the back door with a little celluloid pocket calendar and let myself in. I left it open for the sake of a quick exit if it becomes necessary. Guess that was a mistake, though, because a couple of minutes later, when I rounded the corner of the den into the living room, I felt the barrel of a gun poke into my back.
Out of town, huh?
Now, wait a minute.
Don't move, Eddie boy. Trying to stall off paying me the $5 grand by saying you were out of town.
Hey, look, I'm not Edward Carr, okay?
Are
Hold
you
on.
kidding? Don't know what happens when somebody tries to stall me?
Wait. Oh, I don't know how long I was out, but it was dark when I came to, except for the faint glow from the streetlight outside. What aroused me was the sound of footsteps, feminine steps, cautiously entering through the back door. Then briefly silhouetted against the window, I saw the trim, petite figure that was all too familiar. Then she saw me.
Darling, you're hurt. What happened?
What do you think?
Who slugged you?
Don't you know?
Yes, of course. It was Tony because you didn't pay him for the Arcadia job. Here, let me help.
No, just let me rest down here.
I thought it was Tony's car I passed here on the road from Sarasota.
Why'd you come over from Sarasota?
To see you. I knew you'd be busy waiting.
Uh-huh, waiting? Waiting for what?
You know, waiting so the police could surprise you with the news of your poor brother's death.
And you knew I'd be here, I suppose.
Oh, darling, no. I just noticed you when I came inside to check the house. But you shouldn't have come here until I raised the money to pay off Tony.
You mean for killing Arnold, too, right?
Of course, but wait a minute. No. Are you telling me you didn't kill him? But I saw you outside his house in the Buick.
You'd swear to that, would you?
I don't know what you mean. Wait a minute. You don't sound like you trust me. We're in this together.
Are you sure about that?
What are you talking about?
Whose idea was it to kill Arnold anyway?
What do you mean? As soon as you discovered that you'd set the fire in Arcadia, you had no choice.
That was the way you were figuring it from the beginning, huh?
Now look, dear.
First it was burn up the lumber yards and then collect the insurance on it. Then convince me you and I should have it all by putting Arnold out of the way.
But you had to kill Arnold. I don't understand.
I wish I didn't understand you, Mike.
Mike?
Come on, let's turn on the light.
No. If somebody sees us, well, they would... Oh, who are you?
Are you kidding, Mike? Wait a minute. Who are you?
I know who you are. You're Johnny Dollar, the investigator that Mike told me was investigating the fire. She told me... I've got to get out of here.
Oh, no, you don't. You're staying right here. You're Mike's sister, aren't you?
We're not sisters. Although we played sister act before she married that foreman guy. And let me go.
Not by a long shot, lady.
It is well, Dollar.
What?
Kenny?
Don't move, Dollar. Get his gun, baby.
Yeah, sure. Eddie?
Thanks, baby.
That must be Ed Carr, I presume.
That's right. You know, we do look alike, you and me.
Yeah, sure. Enough for Betty here to tell me all I needed to know.
Don't believe him, Eddie.
I heard.
No, Eddie, I thought it was you. Don't you see?
Yeah, sure. Why'd you come up here anyway?
Because Mike told me that Dollar was coming up here, and I thought I'd better check the house to make sure there was nothing incriminating here.
You've been shooting your mouth off to Mike, too.
She knew about it. She thought I might have something to do with the fire. She was my friend. She was trying to get me out of this whole mess.
Well, it's too late now, baby.
What are you going to do?
You know now. I'm going to have to get rid of both of you.
No!
And I'll have to think of some way to shut up Tony's mouth.
Please.
You'll never get away with this, Carr.
Oh, no? I know what I'll do. I'll call Tony and tell him to come over to get his money. Then I'll call the police, see, tell them to come right away. Tell them I found out Betty was having Tony start the fire.
What?
That's right. I'll tell them you had Tony burn up the yards, so it'll be even more money for you to bleed from me, like all the dough you take from me already.
You're crazy, Ed.
I'll call the police, and when they get here, it'll be just in time to see me shoot Tony in self-defense.
You're out of your mind. They'll run a ballistics check on your gun first thing.
That'll prove it. But the only shot out of my gun will be the one that gets Tony. This gun of yours will be the one that knocks you two off, and they'll think it belongs to Tony.
Oh, Eddie, please, you're either drunk or you're crazy.
Crazy? To save my own life. To keep you and Tony and Dollar from putting a noose around my neck.
If you think that harebrained scheme of yours will ever work, you're off your rocker.
It's got to work. It's my only chance, and it's going to work right now.
Eddie, no! Oh.
Thanks, Captain.
Well, I was afraid it was too late to save her, Johnny.
I know, but at least Edward Carr will live to face a jury. What brought you out here anyway, Hudson?
I did, Johnny.
Mike, stay there. Stay right there, Mike.
I know, Johnny. I don't want to see her. She was my friend.
Where's Earl?
I came alone. When I talked to Betty this morning, I knew this was never going to end up right. I knew Ed and Betty were going together. Earl never knew.
Yes, and what are you going to tell Earl now?
The truth.
Expense item number 6. $9.86 cash for the drive for the two of us back to Sarasota. Remarks. Betty has already paid for her part of the deal, and it's pretty obvious what's going to happen to Ed Carr and Tony Ricardo. The insurance money in the estate will be divided according to Florida state law. Further remarks. I was right. The apparent friction between Earl and Mike was only part of a normal married life. They make a nice pair. And I thoroughly enjoyed the 3 days of fishing in the Gulf, thanks to Earl. Expense account total, including all the incidentals I could think of, $385.26. Yours truly, Johnny Dollar.
And now here is our star to tell us about tomorrow afternoon's recreation.
There have been many Western radio shows, and with the possible exception of Gunsmoke, perhaps none has had an influence on the American society as much as the Lone Ranger. Join us tomorrow, won't you, when Fred Foy and a cast of many others bring you a thrilling episode of yesteryear from the annals of the Lone Ranger.
Yours truly, Johnny Dollar, originated in Cincinnati. It was produced by Robert Burchett and directed by Donald Ramlow. Featured in our cast were Parley Baer as Earl, Fred Foy as Lieutenant Hudson, Kathy Gill as Mrs. Harper, Stephen Thompson as Johnny Dollar, Jeanette Aston as Mike, Kathleen Drew as Betty, Ken Borden as Arnold, R. Joel Center as Edward, Mark Middlestadt as Larkin, Dan Nather as Frank, and George Dershimer as Tony. The music was provided by Ed Clute with assistance by Nana Clute. Sound effects were handled by Barney Beck with assistance from Murray Shenzen and Eugene Hewlett. This nonprofit recreation is copyrighted by the 10th Annual Old Time Radio and Nostalgia Convention, and no commercial use or sale of this program is permitted. And don't forget, return with us tomorrow afternoon when we present the adventures of the Lone Ranger. This is Fred Foy, your announcer, saying good night and see you tomorrow afternoon.
Our guests who partook in this convention and recreation. Thank you very much. And over here, Eugene and Barney, thanks a lot. And Murray, hidden over the corner, thanks a lot too.